Greetings once again, everybody. In this third video, we're going to go beyond RAP and talk about major research advances in Alzheimer's disease from across the world. There's been a number of exciting discoveries. We'll talk about a few of them here. In the slides ahead, we'll talk about clinical trials for Alzheimer's. We'll talk about trends in implementing multi-dimensional lifestyle and health interventions. And we'll talk about a major advance with a potential simple blood test to detect Alzheimer's disease. In December of 2019, Biogen came to an international conference and announced the results of their recent drug trial on the drug called aducanumab. This is an experimental drug designed to target the amyloid plaques that are in the brain, and it uses the body's own immune system to do this. What they reported is that aducanumab slows cognitive decline in people with mild cognitive impairment or mild dementia, and it also slowed functional decline, which means decline on normal activities of daily life. In addition, they found that this drug removed amyloid plaques from the brain, and the way they know this is they did amyloid PET scans before and after treatment. They also found that persons in the study that received the highest dose of their drug, who also were on it for a longer period of time, demonstrated the most benefit. Okay, here is a result from the aducanumab trial. What we see here are three groups of people over time, over 78 weeks. And there's a placebo group here in gray, and a low-dose aducanumab group in blue, and a high-dose group in purple. And over the 78 weeks, we see a gradual separation of these lines, such that the group with the high dose of aducanumab had the lowest amount of progression of Alzheimer's disease. This is the main outcome of their study. Okay, I really want to show you this result from that study. This is a result of amyloid PET scans, and there was a subgroup in this trial that had PET scans at baseline before they started treatment, and then 26 weeks, or about half of a year into the study, and then at 78 weeks. And the two treatment groups, both the low-dose and the high-dose group, exhibited a significant and remarkable amount of amyloid reduction by 26 weeks, and this continued to decline by the end of the trial at 78 weeks. This is a remarkable set of findings, and it suggests that this drug does indeed remove amyloid plaques from the brain. Well, as promising as these results are with aducanumab, it's important to point out that the drug had a fairly complicated path to the conclusions that were finally reached. For example, there were dosing changes in the protocol over time, and more of the subjects were moved to the high-dose treatment. And there was also an analysis done about 3/4 of the way through the trial that suggested that the study may not work. And so they stopped the trial early. But when all was said and done and they analyzed all of the results together, their results actually did suggest that the drug worked. And it worked particularly in the people who had the high dose of the drug for an adequate amount of time. So there is reason to be cautiously optimistic about this experimental drug. And this company, Biogen, plans to apply to the FDA to have this drug approved for clinical use. We don't know what the FDA's decision will be, and I think all of us, both in the research community and the providers who treat patients with dementia, and of course the people with dementia all over the world, are anxiously watching what will happen with this drug. Well, in addition to the drug I just mentioned called aducanumab, there are more MABs, or monoclonal antibody studies, going across the world. There's more trials with the drug aducanumab. There's studies on a drug called donanemab, and one that doesn't have a name yet. It's called BAN 2401. And there's a number of prevention trials that are ongoing to see if researchers can prevent cognitive decline and dementia. The NIH is funding 2 of these studies. One is called the A4 study. The other is called the AHEAD study. And pharmaceutical companies are partnering with NIH in this regard, and they're also conducting their own studies as well. These monoclonal antibodies, that technology is being used to see if we can pull the tau protein out of the brain as well. Recall, this is the protein that causes neurofibrillary tangles. Finally, there's a number of studies going on across the world looking at lifestyle and health modification to see if we can prevent cognitive decline and improve functioning in older adults. Well, non-pharmacologic interventions that involve simply modifying and optimizing lifestyle and health factors are gaining popularity in research, and a lot of that has been inspired by a study from Finland, which enrolled older adults who were from the community into a non-pharmacologic study where the intervention was improving their diet, putting them in an exercise program, a cognitive training program, and intensively monitoring and managing their vascular health, more than what would usually be done. And the control group was people who were just receiving usual care. And what this study found was that compared to the usual care group, the intervention slowed cognitive decline and it lowered the likelihood of disability. Now, this result is very promising, such that it's now being tested in other countries, including the U.S., and we anxiously await the results of these studies. Now, I want to shift topics now about another really exciting advance in the field of Alzheimer's research, and that is the topic of blood-based biomarkers. And by that I mean performing some kind of measurement that tells us if the amyloid proteins and the tau proteins that cause the plaques and the tangles can be detected in the blood. And there's been a series of new studies all suggesting that this is indeed possible to detect Alzheimer's pathology in the blood itself. Now, these blood tests need to be validated against the gold standards, the spinal fluid and the PET biomarkers of amyloid and tau. And it needs to be done in large samples that are diverse and span many places around the world. But all of this so far seems to be promising and pointing in the right direction. And towards this effort, the blood samples that our participants in RAP have provided over the years are about to be sent out for some analyses together with the spinal fluid and the PET data on those who have provided that kind of data to us. And we will soon be able to see if this blood test works in the RAP sample, and we're very excited about that possibility. Well, let me summarize what we've talked about in this video. The first point is that these results are experimental. We are certainly very optimistic about this new second-generation class of medicines that potentially remove amyloid from the brain and slow decline. There's a whole handful of these types of medications that are being tested, and we're anxiously looking forward to their results. Regarding lifestyle and health modification, I think this is going to be an important approach for lowering the risk of dementia, and it's likely that this is because these kinds of things improve brain health generally. They improve blood flow to the brain, they improve growth factors, and they increase the connectivity between different areas of the brain. And so this is all very important for creating some resilience to any disease that may be occurring. And finally, with the blood tests, it's quite possible that in the near future, if these blood testing approaches are validated, that this will be available in the clinic and be available to you and I as we go to the doctor to assess memory concerns. And so all of this together suggests that there's a pathway to early detection, to diagnosis, and hopefully to some effective therapies in our very near future.